Welcome to After the Buzzers Sports Podcast, the podcast that's all about sports and the African American community. Let's go.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Saturday out there. Welcome to another edition of After the Buzzer Sports Podcast. As always, I'm your main man, Marvin Orange. By my side, I got the lovely Raquel M.R. Thomas. Lee always bringing the heat Jones and pulling up the scenes as always. Mr. LP keeping everything tight for us. Listen, guys, we got a special show today, and I'm really excited. Former NBA two-time champion Jason Caffey from the Chicago Bulls, Golden State Warriors, Milwaukee Bucks. He's going to join us today for our second segment. We also played together at the University of Alabama, so pretty special segment for me. Looking forward to catching up with him and just talking about a lot of things, all basketball and what he's up to now. We've also got some great topics for today. We got Morehouse College, who has decided to cancel the 2020 football season. Really interested to hear what you guys think about that. Malcolm Jenkins is in the news. He's saying that football is a non-essential business, and his thoughts about how he feels about coming back to play. I'm really interested on what you guys think about that. And despite the soaring cases in COVID-19 that's coming out right now, NFL training camps are going to resume as scheduled or going to start as scheduled. So how do you guys out there feel about that? Also, we've got Saints quarterback Drew Brees back in the news, but on this time maybe a little different note. He's going to host the Black College Football Hall of Fame event. It's called the Road to Equality. What do you guys think about this gesture? Think about the things that he's trying to do to maybe correct some things that he said earlier. The NBA and the NBPA finalized the deal to restart the 2019 season with a rise in COVID-19 cases among NBA players. What do you guys think about that? How do you feel about this NBA season getting started back up? And who's really the best young quarterback in the NFL? A little bit light note, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. Maybe there's some other young quarterbacks out there you guys think might be better suited than Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. So tell us how you feel about that. Earlier this month, the state of Florida passed a name, image, and likeness bill that will allow student athletes to profit off their endorsements. This is always an ongoing saga, things that we talk about, but I'd really love to hear how you guys feel about that. Chime in, tell us what you think about this. Is this going to be a game changer? And last but not least, the University of Tennessee did their athletic budget for this year, and they included fans in the stands. So I guess they're kind of, putting a mandate out there of what they expect to happen this college football season. So tell us what you guys think about that. As always, call in, talk about our subjects with us, 803-570-5031. Let's get it. First subject, Morehouse College cancels the 2020 football season. I'm going to start with you, Lee, because I know you have a lot of thoughts about this. How do you feel about this maybe being the start of a trend in college football?
Yeah. I think it definitely is, especially at the Division II level, Marv. It looks like, now as we've gotten closer and the NCAA has given the guidelines for workouts and things of that nature, I think the smaller schools, the Division II and III schools, you're going to start to see those schools start to cancel the seasons and start to, opt out, I would say, on exposing their players. We talked about this a couple of shows ago, the financial commitment that it takes for them to test every other day and to performance trace and contact trace, that's a large financial commitment. And so I just feel that this is just the tip of the iceberg, with Morehouse being the first to do it, because those smaller conferences that don't have that huge revenue, those huge TV deals that the money's going to be coming in, rolling in, they just can't afford to do it. And the exposure to the student body and the athletes is going to be tremendous. So I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think we'll see more and more colleges do that. And unfortunately, that's the signs of the times that we're in.
Yeah. Raquel, I know HBCUs are near and dear to your heart. So how do you feel about this subject?
Well, I think a lot of it, boils down to financials. They can't afford it. They cannot afford to play football with what's going on in the world as far as the pandemic. Doesn't make sense when you look at the rules for keeping the student athletes distance properly, just the bus alone, you got to have 10 buses to transport. So from a financial standpoint, those Division II schools, HBCUs, they just can't afford. They're not bringing in the dollars to afford to have a season. So beyond the financial aspect and just it's not affordable to keep the kids safe, to provide what's needed. Again, as a parent, I don't really think they should be playing anyway. So beyond just not being financially feasible to make it happen, we don't have a way to protect these kids, whether, we're talking about the Big Five or HBCUs, Division II, we still don't have a way to really protect them. So I am actually for them canceling the season, and I would prefer it to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, and I'm curious, you two, there's a few coaches who said that even beyond the dollars and cents aspect of this, they're talking about more from a social standpoint of just of protecting the community at large and protecting student athletes, because we're supposed to be about student athletes and giving them the best, idea possible to move forward in sports and getting an education. But more of them are saying this is about protecting their community at large. How do you guys feel about that statement rather than just the dollars and cents side of it?
Well, I think my stance on that. I've been saying that from day one. Not only are we talking about protecting children, they're not adults yet. We're also talking about protecting their grandparents, right? Their aunts and their uncles when they go home. So it's beyond the student as well. And I think the most important thing, especially for the kids in HBCUs, Division II, we know that the likelihood of them going pro is much slimmer than some of the bigger schools, right? So I would prefer them to be safe than sorry. The season to be here next season. If you're graduating, you know what? I prefer you to go on and become educated and start your career and start to become a man that can take care of his family. So for me, I'm all about the community piece. And I think that's just as important as even if they had the dollars, because I feel the same sentiment for the bigger schools that have the money. I still want them to figure out how you're going to protect these kids. I know you're going to make the billions of dollars, but how are we going to protect the kids? Clemson has how many players right now with COVID?
Yeah. I think there was 14 more players that tested positive.
Yeah, they're up to about 27, I believe. But the reality of it is the big schools are going to play, and they're going to contact trace, and they're going to isolate. And so that, the economics of it, the smaller Division II and III schools, I think there's going to be a lot of them, and they'll probably hit it back to back conferences, making those announcements as well that they're not going to play this fall, or the fall sports are going to be canceled. But those larger schools, and we have to, I try to be a realist with it. They're going to play. They've already set the stage for it as far as telling what their protocols are going to be, and we have to accept that's the way that's going to be. Lamondre, do we have a caller?
We do.
All right.
Caller, you are on. Caller, are you there?
I'm here.
Go ahead.
All right, go right ahead, and please turn your device down.
We will. I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Coach Keaton here. I'm chiming in on the Morehouse situation in the small school.
Coach, what's up?
What's going on with you guys, man? I agree with Lee with what he said as far as it concerns. They've already set the guidelines and what they want to do as far as playing the sports. But I also don't think that we're in America right now. And if you look at the numbers state that they're rising. I was on Facebook this morning and saw that they had a full-fledged block party in Atlanta, and like it's no case of coronavirus out here, and that's just the rest of America. It's not just white, it's not black, but I think in terms of what schools might do, a lot of them are in the conversations that's been had with the American Football Coaches Association, with all the head coaches and different things. They don't want to have to start and then turn around and have to quit in the middle of the season. K-State just had a case where they had 23 and then they had quarantined them and then turned around and had another case of 14 after they started back to workouts. Then you turn around and you see Texas Tech having the same thing. There's a lot of trends and cycles that are making some of them retract their statements coming from the American Football Coaches Association, which protects us as coaches to let us make good, sound decisions about what we should do. And I think the case in point with Morehouse bagging down from playing, my hat goes off to Morehouse because we don't have the resources. We don't have the money that's at stake for those colleges that need that revenue to be able to function. A lot of the math teachers, science teachers, and everybody else depending on that television money to come through in order for them to be able to function throughout the school semester, both semesters. Just as it's the small schools and the big schools are dependent on their students to come back. But I tell people 90,000 people don't gather for the math tournament. They gather for a football game, a basketball game, and those sort of things. But if I had a choice in the matter, I'd say Morehouse did a great job. They thought about their students. They thought about their health. They thought about everything that was involved. So I really appreciate them doing that. And I think you'll see on down the road that a lot of the smaller schools will follow suit.
Hey, Coach, I got a quick question for you. Have with the American Federation of Coaches, have they talked any about, even at the smaller levels, pushing the season back at all? Or even, and I know playing in the spring, that's a lot right there. A lot comes into play for that. But has any of that talk been out there?
Yes, as the numbers have been increasing, there's been constant talk. We had already pushed for September the 5th was the start date. Then they pushed it back to September the 12th. So now there's another conversation that was had as of Thursday of we may have to possibly push it back a little bit further. Now the Division Ones are, and when you talk about the football coaches, we all meet as coaches across America. We did it via Microsoft Teams this last weekend, and when they talked about, okay, there is going to be some football that's going to be probably played in the spring, some championships, some conference championships that's going to be in January, February, pushing in sort of like basketball. Basketball is in a position where if the NBA does decide to play, they'll be playing all the way up until it's 1 week left before they start training camp for their next following season. Yeah. So my question is how long will they let this go on before they just have to say this is a loss? And I know the people that with the economical and the money and the different things that sits in suits that's hard, but I like to say they're above my pay grade. They're thinking about dollar signs right now.
Right. Coach, do you see any scenario where, and just speaking from a Power 5 perspective, do you see any scenario where they don't play this year?
Oh no, that right now they're, as Lee said, that's why I say I agree with Lee. They're totally on board with playing. And the question is they're going to play. The question is when they play, will they have to stop in the middle of their season? And the question is when they get to a game and they could lose possible games, which is going to cost a lot of people a lot of money, that if I get somewhere and they call the night before and say 30 of our players tested positive, we can't play this game, nor can we travel because we had to quarantine 65 of our players. That's the questions that are really being posed, and that's why they're trying to distance the travel to where maybe you might only play your conference games. The big teams can afford to fly their kids places. They can get them there and get them up out of there. Now, the possibility of playing without fans, that's probably coming to be more of a reality than anything else. But as far as them not playing, you don't have anybody, or AD or president from the Power 5 that consider themselves with TV money. They're not backing down because, like I said, the math department, the science department, every other department is funded by off the backs of those kids who have to go out there and play. And it's just the nature of the beast. They're going to play because they need that money and they don't want to lose all that television money.
Absolutely.
Coach, I have a question as well. You coach at Allen University. What are you guys talking about? What are you guys talking about in the front office in regards to Allen coming back to play?
Unfortunately, we're talking about playing. We have to follow suit with what the major colleges tell us to do.
Yeah.
A lot of places, people don't understand that it's made by the organizations in the leagues. The leagues make the decisions, and when those decisions come down, now you can do what you need to do as your own entity or a university. You can say that we're not going to play. But unfortunately, because Allen is so young in the football world, that if we didn't play, it could be a devastating loss for us.
Yeah.
We could lose our recruits. We could lose everything that we've put together in 3 years. So I think in hopes, and this is no valid to this because it didn't come out the president's mouth or nobody else's mouth. My opinion of this, I'm thinking that they're just waiting to see how all this plays out because it's early June right now. It's late June, early July, and a lot of them are seeing the backlash from a lot of the colleges. And Morehouse was the only place that stepped up and said that as an institution, we're deciding that we're not going to play. Allen has not made that statement, nor have we even had that conversation. The only thing we're doing is preparing to figure out the safety measures that we can take within the funds that we have in order to keep our kids as safe as possible.
Right.
One more question, Coach, real quick. From an economic standpoint with Morehouse, I know that, they're going to lose a lot of money just from not playing a football season, but are there any penalties that they may receive from a conference or from the NCAA in terms of deciding not to participate? Is there something down the line that could affect their program from that standpoint?
No, because the conference supported them in their endeavors. And if they do, the only penalty that they will face is possibly having to pay the contract to the school if it was an away game to them. So whatever they negotiated in that contract, they would have to give up the $5,000. But I think if you're getting $5,000 to $10,000, we're not talking no money there. We can cut a check for $5,000 and be okay with that. But the problem that I think that Morehouse and what every other small school is concerned about, if my kid signed to play a scholarship at Morehouse University to play football, would I stay at the school if I'm not playing football? Would I decide to opt out? Morehouse is almost a $50,000 education. Okay, if I still get to keep my scholarship, yeah, I might decide to do so. But if I can go to a smaller institution that has online capabilities to do my studies that's going to be cheaper to me, why wouldn't I just sit out until you brought football back and I just attend somewhere where I can make a little money to get my classes? That's all I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Hey, Coach, always thank you calling in. We appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
All right, Coach.
Bye.
Good insight there from Coach. And to move forward with this conversation in a little bit different direction, though, we got Malcolm Jenkins, who said that football is a non-essential business and we don't need to do it. And then he tried to kind of clear it up a little bit. He said that before they completely eliminated everything, would he feel comfortable coming back? So what do you guys think about him saying football being a non-essential business?
I think it's not. It isn't. I mean, that's true, right? When we think about it, that's a slap in the face to a nurse. That's a slap in the face to the city bus driver. So it's not essential. However, we live in a country where sports is what we do.
Yeah.
And entertainment is very important to our culture, is very important to our country. And at the end of the day, this is how people make their living. So when I think about essential and I think about football, I think, well, we are, and I'll go further down and say, well, every employee that works at that arena, you're taken away from their families and feeding their families. So it's not essential, no, because that's slapping a nurse or doctor in the face. But it is essential to some people's family and being able to provide and take care of their family. What about those workers who've been there for 20 years?
Yeah.
So I think we have to look at it in more than one way, beyond just throwing the football, beyond just the entertainment. There are a lot of people employed, and we have to think about them as well. Now, that doesn't go to say, I'm saying, hey, let's play football, but I'm saying it's more to weigh in than just looking at that football being thrown in the air.
Yeah. And to add to it, before you go real quickly, the truth of the matter to me is that the NBA and NFL are completely different. The NBA, because of the size of the roster, the number of people that it takes to pull off the NBA season, it's just not quite as expansive as the NFL. I mean, you got 53 people on a roster. I think it's 46 players that can be active. You got a large number of coaching staff, trainers, athletic facility. I mean, all the things that go into putting on an NFL football game. How do you control that environment? I mean, you just can't.
You can't.
So you can't. So, and I understand what he's saying. I mean, you know, football is kind of the fabric of who we are. It's, you know, as Raquel said. But, you know, I agree. It's not essential. And what comes from putting on a football game, you don't know the impact that it's going to have socially where all these people end up going, because it takes a lot to put on a football game. Lee?
Yeah.
And, you know, just here, before you go, Lee, really quick, you know, to your point, Marv, we are having record numbers in the state of South Carolina, 1,200 people a day. Yep. So you have the possibility of affecting our numbers could get to 2,000 a day, you know, so it's so many levels to it. There's no way to keep people safe.
Yeah,
Lee?
Absolutely.
Well, you know, first of all, Raquel, you have some great points, you know, because when we look at, you know, the parking attendants and the people, the vendors that are selling things at the games, you know, this is their livelihood. Those, including the preseason, you know, those 20 weeks, 21 weeks, that's important to their lives. And so when we say, I don't know what essential and non-essential is, I mean, when each state has their own variation of that, so I don't get caught up in that, but a lot of people rely on the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball for their livelihoods. And they're part of that, you know, 40, 50 million people that are unemployed in the country right now. So that's difficult. Just real quickly on Malcolm Jenkins, look, you know, Malcolm Jenkins, I mean, you know, he's a CNN contributor right now. And so his statement to me is really a little clouded, because let me say this. Malcolm Jenkins doesn't represent the rank and file of the NFL players. You have to look at, you know, to me, there's 10% of players that are the highly paid, the quarterbacks and the highly specialized positions that make all of this money. And then you have the lower 10% that are getting ready to leave the league that has made. Malcolm Jenkins made $60 million in his NFL career. But the rank and file of the NFL is the ones that fall into that 3 to 4 year category that's the lifespan of their career. And they're not making this major money. And they're the ones that really will decide whether they play. The one thing you haven't heard is a lot of NFL people saying they're going to opt out of playing. You haven't heard that. You don't hear that. The NFL players are going to play. Malcolm has a different perspective, because in 2 years he'll be done playing, and he's made good money, and he has good investments, and he's a smart guy. But the rank and file, those guys, they need to play, a lot of them. And so you know, essential, non-essential, you know, I don't get into all that, but I know that Malcolm Jenkins really doesn't speak for the mass majority of the professional football players that are out there, because you haven't heard a word from those guys, because hey, they don't have guaranteed contracts, and they have to, a lot of them, this is how they support their family, and they're living paycheck to paycheck, and so they want to play. So that's what I would say about his statement. I don't think it represents the NFL in totality.
Absolutely. Well, while we had a moment, I did want to touch on this briefly about Drew Brees. The New Orleans Saints quarterback. He decided to, you know, sponsor the Black College Football Hall of Fame event, the Road to Equity. What do you guys feel about this step that he's making? Do you think that it makes up for what he said, or is it just a PR stunt?
Go ahead, Raquel. I like for you to go on these type of things first, because yeah.
I'll say this. I think it's a great gesture. It does not make up for what he said. However, I think he does want to mend fences, if that makes sense. I think he wants to mend fences. I think he's trying to apologize. I think he understands that if not a mistake, he should have just shut up. I think he understands that in totality at this moment. And I think he is trying to say sorry. He's trying to extend the olive branch. And I can do that by making an impact. I can do that by helping where I know there's a need, or I know they need my money and my dollars. And because Black people are so forgiving, and we've been a forgiving people forever, he knows that for the most part, he can buy his way back into our hearts. I believe that some of it is about really being genuinely sorry that he said it out loud, but I think it's what he felt. And he's not necessarily wrong for feeling what he feels, but it doesn't make up for it. And it was still not necessarily the right thing for him to say, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll take your money and we'll go on and have a great event, and keep spending your money. Keep doing that. Keep that same energy.
Raquel and stuff. That's a tough lady. But look, real, because I know we got Jason getting ready to come up pretty soon, Amar. But look, the guy had a right he has a right to his opinion on the kneeling incident. I just think the timing of when he did it and the circumstances was just terrible. Do I think Drew Brees is a good guy? Yes. Do I think he's sincere in hosting this event? Yes, he's done a lot of things. Helped people with Katrina. He's helped people during the COVID thing as well in the New Orleans area. So I don't think it's done from a place of just totally trying to repair his image. But I do agree, Raquel. It is a good event to host. It bags up what he said. He was going to let his actions show more than just his words, and he's letting his actions show. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think as long as he continues down that path and he's still being visible, I think you said it, we're a forgiving society. And don't forget this, and this is the last point I'll make, Mar. This probably is Drew Brees' last season, right? He has $8 to $10 million waiting on him. Probably for Monday Night Football. So to keep his image squeaky clean is very important. And to get that hiccup and put as much distance between him and that hiccup is very important. So I don't begrudge the man. I say it's a good, smart move for he and his wife.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think we spoke about this before in a couple of episodes back. Put your money where your mouth is. I understand.
Keep that energy.
Yeah, put your money and I also, he's also kind of created a platform. I think they're going to talk about college football and its importance in the civil rights issue. They're trying to make it an educational piece as well. So look, what he said was crazy, what he said was kind of stupid, but if this is the way that he wants to go about kind of fixing what he said, I think it's only going to help. It's going to raise awareness, especially for HBCUs.
Yep.
So I'm all for what he's trying to do. And look, if you're going to put your money where your mouth is, you good with me. That's how I feel.
We'll forgive you.
Lamadre, do we have Jason?
No, actually, I think he has to reconnect.
Okay.
Yeah, he was, just to give you guys a little bit of insight, he's driving up I-95 right now. He had a little, tragedy in the family, so he was doing a couple of things to make sure he took care of his family. But I know he said he had a bad connection, but he's going to jump on as soon as he can, just to give us a little update here. So, so I appreciate him doing a favor for me.
Absolutely.
So let's just
as soon as
I'm sorry.
As soon as he reconnects, I'll connect.
Okay. Good deal.
Sounds good. So let's just kind of keep moving forward and speaking. As soon as he gets in a place where he can have good connections, we'll talk to Jason. But let's move ahead with the NBA and the NBA PA. Definitely finalize the deal to restart the NBA season. Where do you guys stand with this? I know we've kind of talked about this before, but what are your expectations and what do you guys think about this? I'm gonna let you go first, Lee, because I know you got a lot of opinions on
it. Well, they rolling. I mean, they've had a few people test positive, but see, my whole deal, and I say this, and I know Raquel, she's gonna jump on me here as soon as I say this, and and Marv, you help her out sometimes, so you stop there because it builds her up, but. To date, there has not been a major athlete that has been hospitalized to a certain degree that it's going to stop these professional leagues from playing. It's just, or the colleges, the major colleges. It just hadn't happened yet. I talked to a doctor friend of mine yesterday, and he was talking about, and we was talking about athletes, professional athletes, and COVID and all of that. And he and I was discussing, the athlete, their immune systems, how being an athlete and the training that they do and the nutrition that they do, the respiratory system is better than the average American, and that's why you can have an Ezekiel Elliott who contracts COVID. 2 days later, he said he felt fine. He could go and work out, but he said he was going to wait. So the NBA is making a concerted effort to say, we're going to keep you in this bubble. We're going to do all these health protocols. The one area, though, that I think is going to have some exposure with the NBA, the workers at Disney World can come and go. That's not a good thing. That to me, that's a place where the exposure may cause a problem, because if they can go home and be out in the general public and are not confined to the bubble, that could hurt the season. But the NBA season, I always knew was going to check off, because they just it's like the NFL. It's just so much money, and that's from both the NBA and the Players Association. The majority of the players want to play.
I said this to you guys, before we launched our first show. I told you that I had a friend that told me they were going to play because of the TV contract money. So they've known, especially the higher to be's knew that they were going to play. They're going to figure out a way to play, period. And they knew this, when COVID was just kind of becoming the booming conversation in our country. But at the end of the day, I'm going to watch. I'm here to see LeBron win his 4th championship. I'm on board. There's nothing we can do about it at this point. I'm with you, Marv. I didn't think they should play, but they're playing. So now I'm all in. They have me for the whole playoffs. I'm locked and loaded. 22 teams are going to play. I agree with Lee 100%. I think they need to lock in the staff as well. They should be boarded, and they have to stay locked in the bubble with the players, because they will, make no doubt, they will bring it back.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible. But to the health perspective, I think we haven't seen the reason why we haven't seen athletes being affected like the general population is because they're in such great health, they're exercising, their immune systems, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not waiting for one of them to check out on us,
Contrary to popular belief, me either, Raquel. I don't want anybody to pass out and die. I mean, I hope you.
Kevin Durant cleared, he had COVID, and he has been cleared to play. He seems to be doing fine. So at the end of the day, the season is going to happen. And since it's going to happen, count me in. I'll be watching.
I mean, but has there been anything put in place in terms of, I know we got the bubble and, we got people who not supposed to be there and supposed to be now, but you think players not going to have people coming in that bubble? I mean, really, Lee? Come on.
Oh, no.
I mean, you think we really got a bubble?
Hey,
come on, man.
Talk to some of your boys, Marv. They're going to be sneaking them up left and right. That's what I'm saying.
And I'm sorry.
You have the WNBA players that are going to be there as well. So there's a lot of variables. They're going to have
a lot of WNBA, NBA babies born. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But it's
I'm just saying. It's
going to be interesting, and I think it is what it is at this point. It's going to move on. Doesn't matter what you think or feel about it. So if you love basketball, then you know what, we're about to get it.
Yeah. Call us if you have any comments about anything we're talking about, hit us up. We got a few minutes till Jason reconnects. Hit us up.
Also call in. The call-in number is 803-570-5031. Call us. Send us a message if you're live with us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Type your questions in.
So I'm curious, Lee and Raquel, with 16 players out of 302 players testing positive for COVID-19. What happens during this abbreviated season that we're going to see when LeBron tests positive or Anthony Davis tests? No, I'm just saying. I don't want to put it on LeBron because I know how you feel about it. But what do you think the conversation is going to be when one of those prominent playoff teams, somebody tests positive and it just really redirects the whole focus about how the playoffs are going to work and how people see the playoffs. Do you think people are gonna view this as a legitimate continuation of the season? Do you think there's going to be an asterisk by it? Remember the asterisk by the San Antonio Spurs title. I mean, how you guys feel that plays out? Because it's going to happen.
It's an asterisk by it regardless to me,
Yeah.
Marv. I think you have to put 2 or 3 asterisks to buy it. But I count it just the same as if it was an injury. You know what I mean? If LeBron tweaked his ankle or blew out his knee during the playoffs, I mean, hey, the Lakers still have to play. They can't stop playing. So I guess we treat it the same way. That would be highly unfortunate. I can tell you that. And but you have to believe that that's going to happen to a prominent player in this situation. That's going to happen. And that's unfortunate for whatever team it happens to, but you continue to play and they continue to go through the playoffs. And remember, if they're good enough, then that player probably will be back in 2 weeks. The question is, teams like the Clippers who have the depth, right, to sustain that. Even Portland, because Portland has gotten healthy, Marv. They've gotten healthy. Can they sustain? They got a pretty deep bench. Can they sustain? The Lakers bench is kind of suspect. And that's the problem with the Lakers. If Anthony Davis or LeBron goes down, man, they're in trouble. So the Clippers could weather the storm. I believe, Marv, if anyone other than Kawhi goes down, I think they can weather the storm. But if Kawhi goes down, they can forget it. But that's the question that has to be answered. How these teams are built, who do they add before they start it up, and can they survive that type of COVID-related situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There was a topic that I did want to touch on that we didn't get a chance last week while we still wait for him to reconnect with us. Kansas. I know we didn't touch on this last week, but Kansas basketball and all of the allegations that are coming out about Bill Self, the program, some of the things that they've been doing, paying athletes. How do you feel about that, Lee, in terms of Bill Self coming out, being adamant and defending himself against the NCAA and kind of throwing other people under the bus, I would say. But how do you feel about, his response to all of these allegations?
Yeah, I think Bill Self is trying to do what they all do when they get caught with their hand in a cookie jar. He's trying to minimize and throw as much stuff out there to minimize the penalty that's going to be at hand. Let's be real. They should. If you gave Oklahoma State, Marv, a year's ban and you reduce the scholarship, Kansas should get, 2 or 3 years banned from the NCAA tournament. Self himself, and I think what he's trying to protect is himself more than anything with the threatening to sue the NCAA because he needs a show cause, right?
Yeah.
And if they're found guilty, Kansas should fire Bill Self. I mean, look. Kevin Ollie got removed. All of these coaches and Ollie was just sending some texts. You know what I'm saying?
He was just saying, it wasn't even paid for play with him.
Yeah, it wasn't paid for play. He was just sending extra texts. I mean, I forgot. I hit the button. My phone went off. I forgot about it. And this guy, he's, on tape. And these Adidas people are making a transaction. I mean, come on, man. Self is trying to protect himself in this deal, and he's trying to minimize the effect on Kansas, but even more than that, himself, Marv, because there's going to be a lot of people call for Bill Self to be fired.
Yeah, and come on, I mean, you got Bill Self, you basically got him on tape. You've got Sean Miller, you've got the LSU coach, you got Bruce Pearl at Auburn. I mean, these guys are paying. Well, I don't want to say that. Listen, I mean, there are. It's always the assistant coaches that seem to take the fall. And who are the assistant coaches? They're the black coaches, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They're the ones that are taking the fall, and they're the ones that are having contact with the recruits, and putting all these meetings together. And and if you guys, we talked about the documentary before, but Bill Self is, like you said, he's throwing things out there to try to see kind of what sticks to protect his reputation. But I mean, the man on tape. I mean, what else do we need? Seriously.
I mean, that sums it up. But yeah, he's been caught, and now he's trying to deflect and lessen his sentence, which is coming forth. I agree with you guys. There's nothing else to add to that. Absolutely right. We've heard it. Now what? Now what are the repercussions? I think that's what we're waiting for more than anything. And I think they will continue to throw things out there to deflect and for it to become a distraction. And sometimes at work, guys, the best lawyers in the world have been able to use a distraction to get their clients off of something. Yep. So they're doing their job, which, if we were in that situation, we'll have our people doing their job. So it's one of those things where they may get lucky and find the right deflection or right distraction, get out of it. And let's be clear, they could possibly still get out of it. But yeah, he's been caught, and now it's a matter of what are the repercussions going to be, if any at all.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Lamondre, any luck with Jason yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So we'll keep it moving. Hopefully.
Go to the Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes.
Hopefully we'll try to get him in here on the back end, but let's keep it moving. We got Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, the two best young quarterbacks in the NFL. I seem to think there could be some other people in this conversation, but we're gonna take Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson right now. Who you got? Who would you start your franchise with? Who is the best young quarterback out there right now? Go ahead, Raquel. Start this off because we know Lee gonna be long-winded with this.
I'll tell you what. I'm gonna take Lamar Jackson. For multiple reasons, right? Number one being
get her collars.
Number one being Lamar and the Ravens. My son Roman is a diehard Baltimore Raven fan. He's been following the Ravens for the last 3 years. He's 7. He loves Lamar. And I'll tell you, I love Lamar. Outside of football, I think he's just a fantastic kid, number one. Number two, I think his career has no limit. I am looking forward to see what this kid does. Last year, he finished at 66 completion rate. He threw more touchdowns than anybody in the league at 33. He only had 6 interceptions, pass rating 113%, over 1,000 rushing yards, and 7 touchdowns for those rushing yards. He has the potential, I think, to be the best quarterback in the league in the next 1 to 2 seasons. So I am all Lamar Jackson. Sad end to the season last season. Trust me, it was felt at home. Had to deal with a 7-year-old crying because they lost, but I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. I like his overall package a little better than Mahomes. I think Mahomes is also great. He's good too, but if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson.
Go ahead, Mark.
Raquel, you my girl, but I don't know. I don't know if I can vibe with this one. Listen, I do like the comparison, and I feel like it's becoming a modern day maybe Brady versus Manning because they're in the same they're in the same conference. They're going to see each other possibly multiple times a year. But to me, at the end of the day, it all comes down to winning. Not that Lamar Jackson hasn't won, because he has. He's been an NFL MVP. But Mahomes in the playoffs, he's got more passing yards. He's got more touchdown passes. He's got fewer interceptions than Lamar in the playoffs. He got more rushing TDs in the playoffs than Lamar Jackson. Go think about that for a second. He's got 106 QB rating in the playoffs to Lamar's 68%. I mean, that's a huge drop-off. And there's one other thing that he got that Lamar don't got. He got a Super Bowl win. And the way that he won the Super Bowl. See, for me, Mahomes is a wild card in the sense that you're never out of a football game because of the way he can spin the football. There's a great equalizer in the NFL, and that's arm talent. And if you can make every throw on the field, which he can, and some throws that we haven't seen before, that changes the complex and the outcome of football games. And for me right now, I gotta ride with Patrick Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes is probably one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in the last 20 years. I mean, some of the things that he does on the football field, you just cannot teach.
He's definitely the comeback king.
Yeah, I do love Lamar Jackson. I think he's dynamic in so many ways. I think there's things that again, with him, you cannot teach with his feet in the way. And I think he's an underrated passer. He's a lot better than what people give him credit for. But for me, there's no doubt about it. I'm riding with Patrick Mahomes, and I think most people would too.
I'm not most people, Mar. That's the thing about me.
Lord.
But let me ask you this, Mar, real quick. Super Bowl. Super Bowl.
Yes.
Past Super Bowl. And I'll preface it with the Kansas City didn't win, but Patrick Mahomes struggled mightily in that Super Bowl.
He did.
Had 2 interceptions. Had under 200 yards prior to like the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter. And if Kyle Shanahan hadn't have lost his mind for some reason and tried to pass the ball when he should have been running to run out the time, San Francisco would have won that Super Bowl.
Different game.
And the narrative for Pat Mahomes would have been totally different because he struggled mightily. I'll throw that out there first. And anybody that wants to dispute that, hit us up. But so I'll throw that out there just to say I love Pat Mahomes, great quarterback, great young quarterback. But for me, if I'm starting my franchise, I want Lamar Jackson. That's who I want. And let me say this, I'm not saying this for your son though, even though he's a bad man. I saw him wearing that Lamar Jackson shirt, Raquel, and I like that. But when people talk the major categories for quarterbacking, yards, of course Mahomes threw for more yards than Jackson did. But it's interesting. Lamar played 15 games. Patrick Mahomes played 14, right? Lamar had 36 touchdowns. Patrick had 26. You throw in the other 7 that Lamar had rushing, right? That's 43 touchdowns. That you can't compare, right? And 1,200 more yards. The dual threat of Lamar, if I'm starting a franchise right now with the way the NFL is going, it's what I'm looking for. And that doesn't mean Pat can't run, because he can. But the threat of Lamar running changes the whole game. Now, people, Raquel, you brought this up. People say that he's a better thrower. Well, Lamar's completion percentage was better than Patrick Mahomes last year. So
yeah, but wait a minute, Lee. Wait a minute now. Now that's a bit skewed because
why is it skewed?
Because Patrick Mahomes, if you look at his number of attempts.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to get into that.
So okay, go ahead. Let me let you finish.
No, you're right, Mark. You're right, Mark. Definitely there was more attempts. There are more attempts for Patrick Mahomes, but see, that's what Mahomes does. So we're not asking Mahomes to run. So he's supposed to throw it more. But we're asking Lamar to run the ball 200 times a year and get hit 150 times a year. So his accuracy, because he just got hit on his shoulder, it's going to be off. But he had a better completion percentage. So, to me, that means something on Lamar's side. Look, I love Mahomes. I think I love everything about him. But people look at, and they hear people say Mahomes is the greatest thing. He's the best quarterback ever. Look, he struggled in the Super Bowl. Now that's
in a big way. In a big way. He didn't show up.
Right.
I mean, I was looking for the guy.
Yeah, if you go to quarterback rating, and quarterback rating takes a lot of different, all of
his quarterback rating is lower.
For quarterbacking, Lamar's at 113.3. Patrick Mahomes is at 105.3. Yeah. I'm not making these numbers up.
You're not making these numbers up.
I didn't make it up, Mark. I didn't make these numbers up.
Let me ask you an important stat. How many playoff wins he got?
Hey, we're there. We're there.
How many playoff wins he got?
He's only been in the playoffs.
Can you just say it for the people? How many playoff wins he got?
Zero.
Okay. Thank you. Just say it for the people.
But you know what he is, Mark? He's the reigning, defending MVP of the league. That's what he is. So
you taking an MVP trophy, you taking a Super Bowl trophy. Which one you taking?
Well, we're gonna take the Super Bowl trophy. But
he will get a Super Bowl. And
but let me say this: people hear this stuff about, and it always just make me laugh. They hear this stuff. They hear this stuff about Patrick Mahomes, and they immediately go to he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with it. I think when you look at the statistics for Lamar Jackson, shaped up very well, threw for over 3,000 yards and rushed for over 1,200. That has never been done before. And they'll come out and they'll say, well, what about the MVP season that Patrick Mahomes had when he threw for 50 touchdowns and all that? That's great. But by the same token, 50 touchdowns have been done before. There's never been a season in the NFL where a quarterback is thrown for 3,000 yards and rushed for 1,200 yards. Talk to your boy, somebody. If you can play.
Hey guys,
Give me a break. Talk to me. If somebody, so for me, you give me Action Jackson, I'll roll with it, and I'll build my offense the same way Greg Roman is building his offense around Lamar, and we roll with it.
Okay, we do have a comment from Facebook. This is from Poppy Griggs. It says, I think the Board of Governors made a bad decision having the players back on the court. Yes, we all want the entertainment, but we want these guys safe. With COVID-19 still increasing, I just can't understand moving forward with 22 games. I do, however, compliment them on not having a live audience. With that being said, we all know a person could test negative today and show positive tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a fact.
That's a factual statement. But I got a lot of people on my live feed talking about this Lamar Jackson debate, Lee. I'm gonna take a shout out. I'm gonna make a shout out to my man Tamai Williams, 803-570-5031. Call in because I know you got some strong words about Lamar Jackson.
Hit us up.
Yeah, because I love it, Lee. I mean, your stats sometimes are convenient. You know, you run it.
My stats are real. See,
well, those are real stats, Marv. Look, I have the same stats on my sheet.
We all have an opinion. Yeah. We all have an opinion. But for me, I've always said, I have an opinion, you have an opinion, everybody got an opinion. But the data, for me, is the deciding factor on this stuff. And Marv, you made some great points. He has, Mahomes has a Super Bowl victory. There's no doubt about it. But Mahomes was trash in the Super Bowl. That's enough. But he won it. At the end, he won it. Now, I could have thrown that ball to Tyreek Hill. He was so wide open. And I don't know why Richard Sherman let Sammy Watkins get behind him like that. That was foolish. But, hey, they won the Super Bowl. So
right. They won the Super Bowl. Right.
I give him that.
You got to finish games. I mean, any athlete knows.
I'm with it.
You got to finish.
But somebody out there, text your boy Marv and tell me who has had any player 3,127 yards and 36 touchdowns, 1,206 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's never been done before in the history of the NFL.
Is he not on Robert Griffin's path? Is he not?
Robert Griffin didn't do that.
Is he not another RG3?
He's much better than Robert Griffin. And Marv, let me say this.
Your point.
Let me say this, Marv. Marv, let me say this to you too. And I love Michael Vick, but for all my Michael Vick people, he's better than Michael Vick. There is no doubt about that. He's better than Michael Vick. Michael Vick had a cannon of an arm. But you know Michael Vick never threw for over 22 touchdowns in the season. That's the highest touchdown number he had in the season. So Lamar Jackson, 36 touchdowns. It speaks for himself. But
also, y'all, we're not taking something into account that I think we need to mention here. The NFL has changed. So has the way you're allowed to defend people on defense. You can't put your hands on people no more. You can't impede progress coming off the line of scrimmage like you used to. So you don't think, Lee, that some of these numbers are real inflated?
Well,
because
all of the numbers are
so much.
There's something in every era of football,
absolutely,
every era of sports.
But I'm just saying, you got to take that into consideration.
That's like saying a Super Bowl isn't as good today as it was 10 years ago. A win is a win. That's what you like to say.
It is.
The era is an era, and you know whether you could touch or do this or do that. Man, come on, Mark.
Lamadre, check the call-in line. I've had a couple of callers say they couldn't get in, so check it for us, Lamadre, if you would.
Yeah, it's not showing up here. It's not showing up here.
Some people saying it's going to voicemail.
It's not showing up here at all.
Okay. I'll try to work it out on this end, because I know we have a lot of people that want to chime in on the Lamar Jackson situation, and I definitely
got a few people trying to chime in, so
I definitely want them to. So if please do this for us. If you're on Facebook, hit us up. We'll read your comment on the air or Instagram while we work out the technical difficulties with the call-in line, because I want to hear from you. Because I said it, I put it out there, and I believe it, and I think everything supports it. Quit listening to all these people on First Take come to after the buzzers. You'll get more of the truth here. That's all I'm saying, because Lamar has had they downplayed it. He had one of the greatest seasons all time. There's never been anything like this from the quarterback position, and there's really never been anything comparable from an individual position, an individual player, than what Lamar Jackson did last year.
He looked. The last time we saw Lamar in a playoff game, though, he looked real bad.
The last playoff game they lost, Marvin. That's why I say he looked real bad. But he threw for 300 yards and rushed for 100. That's not real bad.
How many interceptions did he have? How many interceptions did he throw?
He had 2 interceptions, but that's the same total that Patrick Mahomes had in the Super Bowl. Come on, man.
But he got a Super Bowl title. See, to me, I can't. I can't get with you.
I think we can move on to the next topic, guys.
I want to hear from some people. Hit Facebook and hit us up, because I need to hear what the masses. Let me educate these people out here on football.
If we got some people that can call in, we'll kind of revisit this a little bit. But let's move on. Earlier this month, the state of Florida passed a name and image likeness bill that allows student athletes to profit off endorsements as early as 2021. Over 24 states have that type of name and image likeness legislation either passed or in the works. Will this change college sports, and is it a Band-Aid for a few?
Jason them couldn't call back in, so hopefully, can we get back on immediately?
We are live.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry about that, guys. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are back. And we were moving on about the likeness issue that was passed in the state of Florida. So let's kind of jump into that conversation real quick. Lee, I'm going to let you start with this because I do know that it's a pretty passionate take of yours.
Yeah, for me, players, over all these years, we talk about the history of college sports. And we talk about Maurice Clarett. We talk about all these players that have tried to challenge the NFL because the NCAA and the NFL because they weren't getting paid and they felt that they were able to play. I think this is a great thing because now a player at least can go to their local car dealership and do an autograph signing session or do an endorsement for the new Corvette and get paid off of their name and likeness. That's the American way. And for the capitalistic NCAA to say we're going to police ourselves at the players' expense. That's un-American, first of all. And so I commend Florida for doing it, but there's 24 other states around the country that has some type of legislation or already approved some type of legislation in this regard, and they should be able to do it. My only concern is that, of course, the great players are going to be able to make money, but it's the other players that,
right,
they're going to be left out in the cold a little bit. So I think it needs to go a little further, and I think a definite stipend for all of the players that are part of a $7 to $8 billion industry. They should be able to get some payment through the university. So I like the law. I like what they're doing, but it needs to go further, in my opinion, to even incorporate paying the players even more money within their stay at the university, because they generate so much money.
What do you think from a recruiting standpoint? Like, how does this change the recruiting standpoint or the landscape for universities when you're going out to recruit players? Is that now a package part of?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's because that's what I'm thinking about.
Absolutely.
I can get you such and such endorsement. I can get you this. I can get you that. We already got this pipeline in place for you to get this extra. I mean, come on, Lee. What you think about that?
Well, this is the deal. And by the way, I think we're back up, so we can have callers now. With the issue with Zoom is I think it's worked out, so we can't have callers. But Mark, let me say this. That's always been the case, right? You know it just as well as I do. It's always been the case. The booster's going to set you up with this, that, and the other. That's never going to change. Boosters have contacts throughout the whole United States from these major universities. So they might can get your dad a job at the local factory in your hometown. That's still going to go on. So now you can have the package deal. But in play, but the behind the scenes of this stuff has always been there, and it's always going to continue to be there. So I don't really think that's an issue. I think legislation should be put in to punish a booster if they set up those deals, because if they're getting actual money now, you eliminate that. But I don't think that's a deterring factor at all, because it's always been there, and it goes on right now. I know you don't want to tell us how much money you got when you. No, I'm just messing with you, Mark. But messing with you. Don't even tell us. We good. But
look, I don't know nothing about that, but I do know something about that. So we're gonna leave it at that. Raquel, how you feel about this?
I mean, I think it should be for all the players on those particular teams. I do think it's one of those things where, we have to be fair. And they're all still kids, right? So yeah. I don't agree with certain players. I think that you should be able to carve out a stipend for all players. And it varies, right? But I think all players on those particular teams should get some type of stipend, because you need them, right? You need them to practice. You need them to get better. You need them on the field. So it's variables. It's still a team. And I think you create a rift in the teams when you have 6-7 guys getting paid and the rest of the team not. When you need that entire team to win, you start to see some hits that shouldn't happen. You'll start to see some things happen, I think, that we shouldn't see. There's still the human factor of being jealous. There's still the human factor of not feeling taken care of when you're also a part of a team. And I think you can kill the team piece, the team environment, by saying, okay, I'm only going to pay these guys and I'm not going to pay these. I think support the entire team.
Yeah, I mean, well said, Raquel. But I'm from the team aspect of it, because I already know. I know dudes gonna be like, well, how much you get? Well, why you get that? Why I'm not getting that? What is it? Is it gonna be performance incentivized? I mean, how do you determine who's gonna get what, Lee? Like, are you saying like Tua Tagovailoa gonna get the share of it because he's Tua, and then the rest just gonna get crumbs?
I really think that it should be a blanket set amount for all players coming in to the university. So none of them, we're not going to make tiers. I think there should be an X amount for every player on the team that they receive. Look, Marv, when you were at Alabama, if you knew that you were going to get for the entire $20,000 that year as a payment for being an athlete at Alabama, you knew that. Would that not been a tremendous help, just cash payment to you for your expenses? We can call it a stipend for living expenses or whatever you want to call it. If you knew that you were going to get that along with your financial aid and other things, that would be, and you could have lived more comfortably, right? And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying give different tiers, because then you make it more like the professional ranks, but factor in a set amount for every player, and it may come out to being, $8 million within that athletic budget for the stipend for players' living expenses, and roll with it. You're making, in some instances, $153 million a year in revenue from your athletic budget, and most of it's football. Why can't they reap some of the benefits? That's what I would say.
They can reap some of the benefits, but then we get into the conversation of name and likeness, right? I use Tua because, I went to Alabama and I love Alabama, but his jersey sells way more than, his jersey sell way more than Joe Blow jersey sells.
Name and likeness is a personal thing, though, Mar. I mean, what I can get for my services, may be different from what you can get. So if Irmo High School, they might give you $5,000 for coming to sign basketballs. It might be one person at Irmo that like me. I can't give a $5. So your name is your name. Those individual players' names are their names, and so they should be able to make as much money as they can off of their likeness. Everybody else in the country can do that. So they should do that. But I'm talking about all the players in general should be receiving a cost of living stipend there.
Well said. Well said. Anything else, Raquel? You want anything to add to this?
No, I think we're good. I think all the players should get a stipend. I think that's what's fair, and that's how you keep a team, especially at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, moving forward, we have the University of Tennessee. They did their athletic budget as if fans were going to be in the stands. So they're assuming that this is the way that they're going to move forward. What are your thoughts about doing an athletic budget with the climate that we're in from a pandemic and everything else? How do you guys feel about this?
I would like to think they did a budget with fans in the stands and also with fans not being in the stands. And we may have not gotten all of that story. We know how the media can be. My thoughts is, they create budgets every year. It is standard, is what they do. I think it could have been as simple as that, right? It is what they standardly would do every single season. In lieu of having a pandemic, I wouldn't be surprised if they also created 2 budgets this season and we've only heard about this one. But this would be standard practice for an athletic team to create a budget with fans in the stands. That's normal protocol. It's not them doing anything out of the ordinary. But I do think they probably did another budget and we just don't know about that particular budget. That's my thought.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's Randy Boyd. Maybe he's the school president at Tennessee. And he came out with a statement that it's going to have a significant impact moving forward on the school, but they're financially in a position to be able to weather that. Let's just be real. SEC last year, I think as a conference, maybe $720 million in revenue with a payout to each institution. I think outside of Ole Miss, who was under some sanctions, each school got a payout of $45 million last year. Wow. So that's what schools just got from the SEC from the revenue. The year before, they got a payout of $43 million. So, it's who cares? They've got the money to be able to sustain, University of Alabama, like I always say, they made 160 some odd million. I think it was a profit of almost 70 million last year, just in football alone. So, I don't really see that it really makes much of a difference, because at the end of the day, they're going to have the money to be able to sustain it. But that's what I talk about with these Power Five conferences. I mean, they're so powerful. Sometimes I feel like, it's the Power Five and then it's everybody else. And we forget about, all the rest of the NCAA and how it becomes effective from these few schools that own most of the power. So, but it's going to be business as usual for them. What you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think these colleges are really going to try to have fans in the stands. That's what I think.
Oh, ain't no doubt about it.
When you look at Alabama, what 85,000, Marv?
Yeah.
Bryant.
Oh no, it's 101 now.
101. Okay, let's say 101,000. I think they're going to socially distance that stadium to have some resemblance of fans in the stadium. I think Tennessee put that budget out, and it was leaked that they're doing it. Of course, they probably will have a budget. They can take that out anyway. But they're planning on having some semblance of another 100,000 seat stadium. So you could socially distance. They're probably thinking about socially distance 35,000 people, right? And so I think they're planning on that. And I think other schools are planning to do that. And so we'll see if it happens. But I think all of these Power Five schools, in some form or another, are planning to have fans in the stadium. They're planning to have as normal of a football season as they possibly can coming up this year, and that includes fans. And fans are that's what those fans of the SEC are going to want.
And that's kind of where I have an issue with this, because I mean, we're just in different times right now. And I think that there's a responsibility of universities not only to educate and teach student athletes, students at the universities, but you also need to be a steward within your community. They know, people coming out to football. I don't care what's going on. You got Alabama, Columbia, South Carolina, University of Tennessee. I mean, all these schools, Florida. I mean, I'm talking about schools, teams that don't have a professional franchise. Like this is it. This is all that they have, and people live for Saturdays. And if people think for 1 second that they are going to be able to control, if they're having fans and people coming out, they're not going to be able to control that, and they're going to come to those games. They're going to do what they want to do. And where is the responsibility? Because these people are going to live and die for football on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And from a community standpoint, how are you protecting your community? Because there is no way that you are going to be able to police that in the construct of what people are saying, what we need to do in terms of COVID-19. You can't. I mean, you just cannot. So we all know this is dollars and cents, but that's where I have a hard time with this. And then, we talked with Coach Keaton earlier. Like, who's really most important here? It doesn't feel like it's the student athlete. It certainly is in the community. What's most important is that bottom line. And that's why I have such a problem with it. Like, this just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Look, in a lot of those places, Marv, to me, you have a lot of these places that their fan base are predominantly Caucasian. And you look at a lot of these players that are out there playing that are predominantly Black, and there's a dynamic to that as well. But they want to see their football, and you're right about how it's going to affect the community. But I know that they're going to try to get as many fans as they can. I know the NFL, Miami's already has a plan for getting fans into their stadium, and the NFL is talking about covering the front level of the seating with the tarps and selling advertisement on those, because it's about money, man. It's about money. That's what it's about. And getting 15, 20, 25,000 fans in there. That's what they're going to do. Whether it's right or wrong, we all know the answer to that. But we realists on this show, and we say that they're going to do that, and that's what the season's going to look like.
Yep, I agree.
Lamar, do we have any Facebook comments or questions?
Nothing as of now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We do apologize. The Zoom phone went down, man, and so we could look. We had a flurry of calls when we were talking about Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. So we definitely will put that on the agenda for Wednesday, because I certainly and hopefully we can get Jason back.
Absolutely.
That was a technical issue with Zoom, and we do apologize, but there was really nothing we could do about that. But we'll try to get him back on next week.
Absolutely. And just kind of closing out here, there is, since we seem to be having a college football season this year. And I know I'm going to kind of go off the cuff with this, but, and I am a huge college football fan. Who do you guys see winning the national title this year? I know it's early, and I know it's kind of early to talk about,
Too early.
but I'm interested. I mean, we're getting to that point, and this is going to be an interesting and different season. But I just want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear you guys' thoughts on who you feel is a prohibitive favorite to take it all this year. Maybe who might be a sleeper. I know I'm coming off the cuff, Raquel, but what you got?
I always got an answer, Raquel. So if you want to go first,
because I think it's too early. I really do. I think it's too early. I mean, we have our favorites, of course, but I think it's too early. So you go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, sleep. It's not really a sleeper because they've been in the playoffs the last 3 years. But I like the Oklahoma Sooners, Marv.
Oklahoma.
They've rebuilt the defense. That kid Rattler that's going to probably be their quarterback is big time. He's one of the top rated quarterbacks coming out of high school when he came out. The offense is going to be, they got top flight 5-star receivers on the football team, returning running backs. They just needed to continue to evolve on defense. They did get some major prospects from as far as incoming freshmen, but they went to the junior college ranks to upgrade the defense, especially the interior line. So I look for the Oklahoma Sooners to finally break through and the Big 12 to break through to win the national title this year.
Is this Dallas Cowboy, Oklahoma? Is that what this is?
I call it like I see it. They've been there twice.
Every year we got to hear about Oklahoma. And what do we say about
what do you like? What do you have on?
Y'all already know I roll Tide all day, every day.
The Tide has fell on hard times here the last couple of years.
Not really.
I wouldn't have thought of Alabama. I'll say that. I wasn't going to put Alabama. Didn't cross my mind.
Listen,
Oklahoma could be there. I don't know. I think it's early.
Our defense is rebuilt this year. We're going to be back to Alabama football this year on the defensive side. From an offensive standpoint, we're going to be a lot more balanced. When Tua was there, it was all about his arm talent. And let's not make no mistake about it, he was a talented thrower of the football. But now we're going to get back to a more balanced attack, which you're going to see some of the old Alabama school days that we used to do that. But the defense was the key for us to get back on the defense side of the football and be able to make stops. They were on the field way too much last year. So I think you'll see a big improvement on that side. I do think Ohio State is going to be a player again. I think Justin Fields is pretty special. Defensively, they're going to be really good. They're going to have a great running game. They got some really good wide receivers. So they'll be there. And, of course, Clemson. I mean, because Clemson. Because they play nobody all year in the ACC, it's just hard for me to always be excited about them because Florida State is trash. Miami is still terrible.
The ACC is very weak.
The ACC is very weak. So it's almost a de facto that they're going to make it to the playoffs because they just have no competition. And that's the same thing I see when I talk about Oklahoma. It's always a shootout. Like there's no defense being played in the Big 12, and then they get into the college football playoffs and they get punched in the mouth in the first 2 quarters. Then they wake up and they start playing, but it's already too late. I mean, LSU treated them like they were stepchildren last year. Like they had no business being on the field. They had no business being on that field, though.
It's all about rebuilding, and that's why I said they know this at Oklahoma, and they need to rebuild the defense. And I think they put the resources and got the personnel to rebuild the defense. My national title game is Oklahoma versus Ohio State. I think that's what's going to be the national title game. I think Alabama's recruiting has taken a step back the last year or so. And you saw it this year because I hadn't seen in the past Alabama's defense get ran on as much as
but let's take into consideration.
Marv said they've been rebuilding.
There's a lot of people going to say hold on, but now I'm gonna do what Lee likes to do: hit you with some facts, some stats. Okay, we lost both starting middle linebackers at the beginning of the season. They didn't play all year, and as you know, Lee, that's the quarterback of the defense. If you're inside, we started 2 freshmen all year in middle and inside linebacker. That's a death sentence in college football. The secondary was a little bit banged up. The line, we lost 2 guys at the beginning of the season that were all SEC defenders. They both didn't play. So, I mean, they were very young last year. It was kind of trial by fire. And they got in games where they just had to try to outscore everybody. And I think that's what got Tua in trouble a lot in terms of the injuries, because so much was put on his shoulders because the defense couldn't sustain. They couldn't stop anybody. And it was an anomaly. You never see Alabama get manhandled defensively the way they did last year. And as an Alabama fan, it was frustrating to watch because they couldn't get off the field. They just could not get off the field. So
maybe frustrating again. I think Georgia's the best team in the SEC.
I tell people all the time, at some point in time, y'all keep saying Georgia. One of these years, y'all gonna be right. Y'all been saying this for about 7 years about Georgia.
They got the Newman kid from Wake Forest coming in there to play quarterback. He's a dual threat. I think Alabama struggles with dual threat quarterbacks. I think
that's an old narrative, Lee. That's an old narrative. Stop it. Don't. That's old. And Jamie Newman wasn't much. He wasn't much in the ACC. He wasn't much in the ACC. So we'll see.
We're gonna have plenty of conversation because I look forward to this because I like Oklahoma. I love Oklahoma. I love the coach. I think the offense without a doubt is gonna keep clicking. It's building the defense. And Marv, you're right when you say that the Big 12, as far as you're going to be in a shootout because the offenses are wide open, but all Oklahoma has to do is keep improving defensively, and by the time the end of the season, be able to play some good defense. They'll win the national title. Offensively, they're going to score, the 40 to 45 points a game as they normally do, 47, 48 points a game.
Before we get out of here, I do have to ask: do the Gamecocks stand a chance this year? Do they have any? That was quick, Raquel.
Look,
do they have any chance this year?
I've always said this about South Carolina. They recruit the specialty positions well from the receivers, right? But I want to see a dual threat quarterback at South Carolina. And I want them to change their perspective on that because I think the perspective is kind of skewed. Every time I see one that commits there in recruiting, he's always playing receiver or something. So stick with the dual threat because I do think they've recruited and they've recruited pretty well. But I want to see them get a quarterback that can pose that threat on these defenses, and I think then we could start talking about South Carolina a little bit more.
Is Muschamp the answer?
Well, if he doesn't, this year will tell us. I mean, I think if he turns in another season like last year, he must go. Muschamp must go. I think. So.
That's gonna be the champ for this year, huh?
All right.
All right. Well. Yeah. We definitely, we had a few difficulties today in the show. I mean, technology sometimes don't work for you when you need it to. But we'll certainly touch on some issues on the next show. We'll try to get Jason back on the next show. Was looking forward to speaking with him, but we'll definitely make it happen in some of the upcoming shows to get him on here to speak about just life and what he's doing now and his time with Chicago and, being on the road with MJ and Dennis and all those guys. Definitely be fun to listen to and talk to about that. So looking forward to getting him back on.
And Mark, we'll put Mahomes and Lamar back on the schedule for Wednesday because the phone was blowing up, but we just couldn't connect it. I don't know why that was, but I know some people your boy has it, so tell them to bring it because I want to hear what they have to say. Prove me wrong or change my viewpoint. I want to hear it.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on these subjects next show. But as always, for Raquel, of course, lovely Raquel, Lee Jones. LP in the background. I appreciate everybody joining us, being part of the After the Buzzer Sports podcast. Like us, Facebook, Instagram, subscribe on YouTube. Am I missing anything, guys?
No, the subscriptions. Subscribe.
No, that's it.
Go
Make
on
sure
there.
you follow us. We need you guys to subscribe. Yep, there you go.
All right. But always, everybody have a great Saturday. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, this has been After the Buzzer Sports podcast.